Hi, I'm Rick Mason of Mid-Michigan ColdFusion Users Group. We're in East Lansing, Michigan, and we're about to begin. And I will introduce Nick, who is going to be speaking about REST and ColdFusion.
Great, thanks. So before we get too far into this, I do have all my slides, the presentation, everything for you to follow if you want on my GitHub account. So github.com/QUETWO. And then you'll see the MMCFUG REST Prezo repository there. If you clone that into your machine, it's actually set up for Docker. So you just type in docker compose up. It'll download everything else, set up the SQL tables, all the demos will work right from there. So that's up to you if you want to do that to follow along, or you can do it afterwards as well. This presentation is going to assume that you have a passing knowledge of CFCs and basic CFML. We're going to be using the Lucee engine and MySQL for all of our demos. But really, any Adobe CF, I should really put version 10 on here and later. And other SQL engines will be pretty much identical. Not really doing anything that special with this. So yeah, the meeting, of course, is going to be recorded. So you're probably watching the recording now, except for Nicholas. So we'll go from there. So really quick about me. I've been a CF programmer since about the mid-90s. Started with Adobe ColdFusion. Well, back then, I guess, Alaire ColdFusion, also ACF, 401. So I think, Randy, you got me beat on that one, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're 3.5 or something, right?
1.5.
Oh, 1.5. Okay.
I'm at 4.
You're at 4 as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So member of the Apache Foundation and a committer to a few different projects. MMCFUG member and contributor. Day job, I'm the manager of the Unified Communications team here at Michigan State University. I'm also an adjunct professor at Michigan State University in the College of Communication Arts and Sciences in the Media and Information Department, where I teach data communications and all that fun stuff. So let's dive right into it. What is REST? So if you look up Wikipedia, it'll say it's the representational state transfer. That means absolutely nothing. And that's the only time I'm going to go and do that definition. 1,000-foot view, what it really means is you're using the metadata of an HTTP call to convey data and select interfaces. Really, it's designed for machine-to-machine data transfers, really in a normalized way. When we say that, it means that we're using a computer of some kind. Let's just say, my laptop, my server, or whatever, to pull down data and then represent it somehow. We're communicating to that far endpoint by using the HTTP verbs, headers, other data that's communicated in the stream, as opposed to the typical way where you display like a web page and like ask the user to input in data and that type of stuff. Computers really suck about that. They don't like to pull up a web page and submit data. This is really meant to convey that data, out of band, if you will. So the interesting thing with REST is, unlike SOAP, RPCs, and all sorts of other communication methods, there's actually no official REST standard. The REST standard we're talking about is really talking about using all the other standards to convey this information. REST is a methodology. It's not really a standard. So I know that there's a bunch of this is how you do REST and all that type of stuff. There's no actual official RFC from the W3C or places like that say this is how you do this. It's all about you use HTTP, you use all these other things in order to convey that information. Generally, it's used to expose APIs from your application and either be consumed by your site or express data to others. So really, when I talk about REST, I typically see it in one of two places. One is, you own the APIs, you're building your own web service or your own website or something like that on top of it to go and use those bits of data. The other piece that you tend to find this in is I want to share my data with somebody else. and then I give you an API, I give you a documentation that says this is how you pull it down. Use this verb, you use this URL. We want to see headers in this manner and that type of stuff. So that's what it's really about, is being able to expose your data, again, either for internal consumption or via documentation to others. So what does it look like? It looks like any other URL or web browser thing that you've ever done. You've got a method, you've got a URL, and then you've got headers that sit on top of it. 1,000-foot view, that's what it's all about. No different. So it's kind of confusing because you would think that you'd be able to pull this up in a web browser or something like that, and then it would just work. And in some cases it does. But because it's really meant for that expressive, all these other hidden things that happen in the HTTP protocol, that's just not there. So, yeah. So when we talk about REST in the ColdFusion world, there's a few ways you can create these API endpoints. One is to create REST CFCs in ACF or Lucee to process the data. This is really the raw functionality that we talk about. Both of those engines have given us a lot of firepower, but they don't do a lot of convenience stuff for us. So for example, you can't build in, you can't just check a box and say, you now have authentication. This API now authenticates with OAuth to my Active Directory, or things like that. It doesn't do rate limiting. It doesn't do automatic documentation. It doesn't do any of that stuff. But it does give you that low-level functionality. It's available for free. It's available as just straight CFCs. So you don't have to worry about oh, is this going to be compatible? Is this going to be, whatever. It's just there. You can use a framework. One of the more popular REST frameworks for Adobe for any type of ColdFusion, I'll just say ColdFusion in the generic world because it works with ACF or with Lucee, is from Taffy. So taffy.io is where you would get that downloaded. Pretty much the way that works is you would take a zip file, or you clone something into your repository, and you would then take you'd map that directory to your web root. So you have /taffy, and then all of your API calls are going to be /taffy/ application, and then you can build your entire CFC libraries based off of that. The neat thing about Taffy is it does start to give you all of that expressive stuff that you would have in it, in any type of API manager. You can start to do the rate limiting. Can you not hear, or?
Oh, you can.
Okay.
I was just looking to see what name brand it was.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really clear.
Good. Well, I'm an audio guy, so.
Yeah.
So Taffy does give you all of that really expressive stuff, like authentication. I don't think it does rate limiting, does it?
It might.
I don't remember seeing that, but it does a bunch of stuff for you. It has a really cool GUI in there, so you can go and do some visual representation of your APIs. It can build some of that documentation for you. I wouldn't say it's great for those things, but it is free. It's there. It's something that you can totally use, really quickly. There's also the Adobe ColdFusion API Manager. That is, if you have Adobe ColdFusion, it is a bolt-on product. I forget what the licensing is. I don't think it's a part of standard, but I think it's a part of the enterprise license.
Yes.
Okay. Now that is a separate exe that you run. Essentially what it does is it gives you access to all sorts of really cool things, like the authentication, analytics, rate limiting, gives you documentation. It does all that stuff for you. And it's there. Again, the problem with that is it's a bolt-on product. The way that you deploy it to a production server makes a lot of assumptions. So there's a lot of nuances that exist with that particular piece. Adobe being Adobe, they do their flavor on stuff. But under the hood, the Adobe ColdFusion API Manager actually still ties into the REST CFCs, like we're going to be talking about them. So what is this presentation going to cover? We're going to cover these, the really basic raw REST CFCs that you can use in ACF or Lucee. We're not going to talk about Taffy. That's probably another presentation. I personally don't use Taffy myself, so I can't really, talk about it a whole lot. But knowing it is there, we do need to acknowledge it. And if you're really into APIs and all that type of stuff, it's something to look at.
ColdBox has a product too.
Yeah, ColdBox has one. There's another one that exists in one of the other frameworks too for APIs. There are some other ones here, but honestly, like when you're talking about APIs, I mean, hell, even Masa or Mira have an API manager that will expose REST endpoints too. Built into it, all that type of stuff. That does the authentication, doesn't do the documentation, doesn't do the rate limiting, it doesn't do guest access, all this other type of stuff, but that is there too. There is a lot of ways to skin this cat. So that's why I said using a framework like Taffy or, one of those other ones. I believe CF Wheels has one as well, I'd like to say. Anyway, bore it with that. So what does it really look like? So I've built some CFCs, and I'm going to go here into the code. Sorry, my laptop is really struggling with Teams and everything else, so it might be a little bit slow here. But really basic demo. I'm going to show here the code first. Oh, this is going to be ugly. There we go. So a really basic HTML page. Hopefully you can read this. Essentially, I've got just a head tag here, nothing that fancy. I think I'm loading in Bootstrap and jQuery. I really don't even need to on either one of these, but I do. Got a body, I've got an H3 that says demo 1 HTML table. I'm just doing a really basic AJAX call over here when the results come back. And by the way, I'm sending it to /rest/election data/Michigan. When the data comes back, I just replace this div tag right over here with the results with whatever comes back. This one here is kind of breaking REST, but it works. So maybe. Oh, this is where I wish I had more than 8 gigs of RAM on this laptop. It's the work laptop. So, okay, so go to demo 1. I'm going to go and see the data as HTML. I've got this fancy little button that's going to go execute that function, and that's going to go contact the server. It's going to go pull it down, and what this is actually going to be pulling down is the election data. So the results of the election that just happened a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, from the state of Michigan. So I've got a SQL server here, all that type of stuff. So this here breaks down that data, every county, what governor, or what office, who was it, number of votes, that type of thing. It's a really big list here. But this right here is essentially I made a REST call, got back some HTML, and literally just dumped into a div tag, and here I go. Really, really simple. Doing another demo here, there's a really cool tool called data tables. You've seen me do a presentation on this before. This essentially is the exact same thing. What it's doing here, and you'll notice that data came a lot quicker because I just had Ingham County data in this one, not the 40,000 records. But this over here does a REST call, goes to the server. Data tables will then do all this fancy stuff to it. But if I take a look at the actual HTML that is here, let me go. Come on, baby. All right, so this one here, really it's the exact same stuff that we just saw with the other one here. We've got a really basic table. The table itself is empty. When data tables loads, I say, hey, there's this URL over here that's got some election data. I do a quick map and say, okay, the first bit of data that comes in is the county, office, party, all that type of stuff. And essentially this is what gets expressed is this over here. Really simple. Again, data tables does all the really hard stuff for me on this one here. I can do search. I can do, I can search for, let's say, the Green Party. All these crazy people that part of the Green Party. Sorry if that's who you voted for, but anyway. But yeah, so this is something really simple right here that just shows the client side of that functionality.
How come it pulled up no affiliation?
Because it's Greenwald in the candidate last name for this one here. So it just does this with no configuration. It just does a search over all the different columns.
Gotcha.
So, oh, what I really wanted to show on this one here was, let me go just refresh. Oh, actually, I want to go into dev mode and go, okay, go into network. I'm going to go refresh. And we'll see here, data tables does all these calls. The important part is right here where it does this, this call to my REST API. Oh, that's actually what it looks like. But when I go and bring this up, there's a couple of different things. Here is a list of all the things I sent it. So I, again, called localhost/rest/election data/Michigan/Ingham. It was a GET request. I got a status code back of 200. There's a bunch of different headers that I sent to it. None of them are really that important in this case, other than I'm accepting the */* as a response, which we'll get into in just a moment as far as what that is. The actual payload, there's no query strings that really matter. And then we get this response here, which is literally just a long JSON string that does all sorts of cool things. Those cool things are, it lists the county, it lists the candidate first name, last name, affiliate, their party, all that type of stuff. So it's just a JSON blob is really what it is.
They don't publish that JSON blob. We'll just go through the state of Michigan webpage and say, oh, it's getting data from over here. I'll just call this direct.
Oh, so this over here, this data.
I don't know what does it.
So no, this over here under the hood, what I did is, yeah, if you go to the Secretary of State website, you can download an Excel document that has all the raw results.
Oh, okay.
And I just imported that into my SQL server. So there's a table sitting on the SQL server on here that just has all this data.
Gotcha.
So really, it's not that cool. It's just there.
That was behind the scenes. I was like, well, how'd that happen?
Yeah, how did you get this cool
Yeah.
data? No, it's there. So
okay.
So let's go back to the presentation. So we've seen what it kind of looks like there. So the other thing I want to kind of intermix with this presentation as well is an application called Postman. So Postman is it started originally as a Chrome plugin. Gosh, I'd like to say almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah, easily.
Essentially Chrome plugin. It was a testing suite for APIs. It's pretty much been free the entire time. But it's now grown up to be a full suite development tool or like platform. Still has this development, or still has the tooling that you can use to test APIs. That's still completely free. In fact, there are certain things you can do, almost everything on it you can do for free, as long as you are a team of less than 3 or you work on open source projects. So, but it is an absolutely amazing tool and to test and help develop your APIs. So anytime I go and write an API or I create an API or whatever in my services, I always go load up Postman, test it, throw the parameters at it that I think that I would need before I go tell anybody else about it, because that way allows me to capture bugs, essentially allows you to do all that debugging and testing and all that type of stuff.
Can't you do the same with Wireshark?
So Wireshark only gives you the raw data in stream. What Postman does is it will give you the ability to say, I want to send these parameters. In fact, let's go do that really quick here. So I'm going to go and create a new tab here. It's very similar to web browsers. It does everything in tabs. We are going to do a get. I'm going to say HTTPS://localhost, and it was under REST. and then it was election data, and it was, oh, what did I do past that?
I forgot. Ingham.
Was it election data? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong spot. Okay, application here. Yep, election data, and then the actual CFC, Michigan. Okay, so election data, and we'll say Michigan, and if I hit send, it's going to go send out that request. Oh, hang on a second here. Again, slow machine, but
You should be playing that Jeopardy music right now.
yeah. Oh, I bet this is going to come back as the HTML, which is why it's so slow too.
Seems like the state of Michigan would limit like how many requests that page would get.
Well, again, this is all looking on my local SQL server.
Oh, gotcha. Smoke and mirror, sorry.
Yep. Oh, yep. It's the HTML stuff. So, but if I do, let's say Clinton, Clinton. So if I do this, it'll come back as there's a reason for this. So this over here was a search for all the, all the results in Clinton County, that type of stuff. So right here, I was able to do a test against an HTTP endpoint, a REST endpoint, and get data back and do, what I want to do. There's ways you can visualize this data. We'll dive into that piece a little bit more. But anyway, this is 1,000-foot view. This allows you to do that testing, and away you go. All right. So talked a little bit about Postman, and we'll get into it a little bit more here in a bit.
What happened to those tools we used back in the day, like Charles.io, and I can't remember the other one. I actually purchased a license.
Yeah, so those are, again, interceptors, and then they essentially, what they do is they sit between their proxy servers. So they sit between your web browser and your endpoint. All your data gets funneled through that and then gets sent out on their behalf to your endpoint. Those don't work as soon as you introduce encryption. So if you do anything over SSL, can't do that anymore. As soon as you do anything over, in fact, the Mac OS and and Windows have made it incredibly difficult to use these types of tools now. It used to be the original concept of the internet was you always went through proxies and all this other type of stuff. That's why those things worked. That is not how the world works anymore. So getting up and working with REST. So how do we build this type of thing? How do we build a really basic thing where I do a select all, like a select star, and then send it to the end user? So there's three points of configuration you're going to have to do. One is going to be you're going to have to essentially define an application mapping. This can be done via code. This can be done via the IDE. Both Adobe ColdFusion and Lucee allow you to do those things in the API or in their administrator. So if I were to go to and I go to Lucee admin server.cfm. This is the equivalent on the Adobe side as /cfide/admin. And I'll do my super secret password, which is currently on the GitHub repository. So you would go into the REST mappings. Oop, not mappings. We want to go to REST. And on here, I can go and define what mappings I would want. You can have it so it does. It'll list all the services, so you can actually do an options, or sorry, a REST call to /REST, and it'll list back everything that's available. So this is the same thing that you would find in like the Adobe ID or the Adobe API manager. And then you would just create your own mapping. So a mapping is what is the virtual application. I call it the application endpoint. What is the name of the URL, and then where is it physically going to be looking for CFCs? So you can do this. I don't tend to go into this interface very often to do this, to do any type of REST endpoints. I always do stuff programmatically. So you drop a line into your application.cfc, you're done. You don't have to worry about any of this. And the nice thing is you don't then have to worry about if you switch from one server to the next, having to recreate those things and all that, because we 100% of the time we always remember to do those, right? We know how to transfer all.
Why would you do it here? Because I was like, oh, I would do that in code because you don't know what server you're sitting on.
Right. You can do it here. I recommend doing it in code. So
okay.
So anyway, but I had to show that it's there. So let's go into our application.cfc. Wrong one again. All right. So I have this fancy block, this line right over here that I've highlighted. REST init application is the function that you would call. It just needs to be called sometime. As soon as that line is called, then the REST manager will know where to look for your CFCs. It indexes them, and then it builds them out. The nice thing is, unlike ORM and unlike some of the other ones, you can make all the changes that you want to your CFCs, and it'll keep on picking them up as long as you've initialized it once. So you do need to do that one line of code. That is, of course, in the presentation. So right over here. So you're going to have your, essentially, you're going to point it to your CFCs or your CFCs, wherever those are located. I always have mine in my CFCs directory because I'm simple like that. But you can have them like, if you hide your CFCs somewhere else, wherever you do your business logic, that would be where they go. You would then say, what virtual endpoint are you doing? So when you have /REST/ what's the next thing? This case here, we did election data. You could really name that really whatever you want. It doesn't matter what the application name is, what directory it's in, whatever. It's just, this is how you do that mapping. Now, if you're using Lucee, they have two additional properties that you have to do. In Adobe ColdFusion, you do not. Those additional properties in Lucee are, is this going to be a default endpoint? So if somebody just calls /REST, will it work? Or do you require that they have the application name? I always recommend saying false, but maybe for some reason you don't need to do that. And then what is the administrative panel password? So in Lucee, you have to know that administrative panel password in order to create a REST endpoint. With Adobe ColdFusion, you do not. You can just go and say REST init application. You pass it the CFC location, pass it that URL, and you're done in the Adobe world. Here you need to know what that password is. You'll notice that in my case, so the actual CFC, I actually pull it in from an environment variable. That way, I don't even need to have it in code. I don't even know what it is. As long as it's set on the command line somewhere, it just knows. Kind of nice. Again, less code that I have to futz with and change a password. Now half my applications break, all that stuff.
Better not change that server though.
Yeah, or change the server, right?
Right.
So, and this works because I pull everything off of a Docker image. So I actually have a configuration file in Docker that says this is what my password is. Or if I deployed this out in like on a cloud provider, I can actually use like their secrets manager and update it there, and it updates my name. Long story short. So that's the first thing we got to touch. So the next thing we need to touch is we need to create a .cfc file. It's going to be in that directory that we pointed the application to. And all we got to do is say REST equals true. That's it. that additional metadata or that decorator, if you will tell the Adobe or Lucee engine that this is a REST CFC and that I'm going to be defining certain functions to take those REST endpoints. Generally, I recommend that. So technically, you don't have to have a REST path in there. I always recommend that you do, because you can get conflicts. If you got two of them that don't have that, then the thing will just randomly blow up. But REST equals true, and then you say REST path, and this would be what is this particular like what's the next part of the URL that this thing is building. So remember, we have localhost / REST, because that's our REST engine, / election data, because that was the application that we defined, and then the CFC is / Michigan. So that's what we've now defined. So that's all you have to do to configure the CFC. Pretty easy so far. So the next thing is you need to start building some functions. Really, these are the same type of functions that you've always used. You know, if you write script functions, it's really easy. You can do these as tags as well. I honestly have never done this as tags, because that's not how I write. A whole lot of, I don't write functions and tags anymore. So, but here we are. So we essentially say it's going to be a remote function. So if you were to write this as a tag, you'd say CF function access equals remote. But remote function, the function name, any type of parameters that we're expecting, and then very simply we would say HTTP method. What verb are we allowing to connect to this? If you don't define anything else, if you do a get right to that Michigan data, this function will execute, and then whatever you return gets sent back. It's pretty much that easy. One of the things that I didn't identify here and when I took the screenshot, unfortunately, is there's also an option called REST path. REST path, you again continue building on that URL. So remember, we've got localhost / REST / election data / Michigan. I can have / something else. So I could say / governor. And, if it says governor, then it'll go pull down all, we can then do some action based on that. What I'm really doing on here is I'm just doing a select statement in this particular example, select star from election results, and then I return type of array, and then I return that, and then that gives us my data. Literally, that's all there is for this particular thing. I built a REST endpoint. So pulling in the actual code that I wrote on this here, and I'm going to make this slightly larger, if I remember how. Appearance. I know if I go into presentation mode, it really screws things up. No, that doesn't do it. Anyway, so hopefully you can read some of this stuff here. So again, this is this first parameter or this first function that we wrote. The very first one, again, get all results. The function name doesn't actually matter. You can go say, give kittens or whatever, because it doesn't actually reference anything for the REST endpoint.
Does Control plus increase it?
I just tried that and that didn't do anything. I know that there's.
I know there was two.
I can go into the settings and all that stuff, but it's going to take like 15 minutes. So, but yeah, this remote function, get all results, HTTP method equals get. And then I build my query right here and I return that. And that's all there is. So what if I want to do something like I want to, well, so that okay, we'll go in there. I think I've got another slide on the next. So a common way to inject data into the stream coming from the client, the endpoint, is via the URL. If you've done any work with REST endpoints that you don't own, it's pretty common that you go and do a post or you do a get or whatever from like /API / application / customer /1 for the first record, or /2 for the second record, or / Randy's serial number for for his record or something like that. Yeah. So we can pull those in. So that is known as a REST path, and that's one of the arguments that we can actually pull in from the URL. So what we would do is let me go back into here. So we're doing this in the second example over here. So the second example, we've got remote function, get county results. I'm requiring, or I'm setting up an argument. Again, if you were to do this in tags, you would say CF argument and then all the same type of stuff, but it's required. I'm expecting a string. It's named key, and then rest arg source equals path. So I'm expecting to get this from the path, not from, let's say, a form post or a URL post or a query parameter or things like that. I'm expecting this from the path. Now,
the end of the path.
I'm somewhere in the path. It doesn't matter. Somewhere.
Oh, okay.
I can define what that is. So after I have all my parameters, I then say HTTP method equals get, because again, this is going to be another get command. And then I say rest path. What is that? What essentially is that regular expression, or how am I getting that property? So in this case here, the CFC ends at /Michigan. I can say, if you say / a county name, I'm going to go take that. So remember earlier we did the request with /Ingham, or we did Clinton or whatever. That's essentially what's being executed. I'm going to get back the string, the word Clinton. I get arguments.key equals the word Clinton.
How does it know that it's a county name?
It doesn't. If it matches that, if it
If
matches
there's something after Michigan, it just assumes it's a county name.
Yep.
Isn't that something that could be up to mischief? Or
Absolutely. Okay. So you don't want to make sure you don't do an insert statement with whatever they write back there, right. But you're not going to get into too much trouble. But let's say what's the name?
The star.
Okay. I mean, I guess I could try star, see what happens. Might be getting back everything. Nope, I got back nothing.
Okay.
Or if I say Cook, I don't think there's a Cook County in Michigan, right?
I don't think so.
So I didn't get back any data in that one either. But if I do Ingham,
Clinton,
I get back the Ingham data. So
just for giggles, what if you put like, I don't know, /Ingham /Eaton? Which one is it going to grab?
Well,
both?
It won't. I don't think so. Nope. It says there's no REST service that matches that property. So it says I didn't define anything for that.
It's like, this is a demo, like bare bones. Okay.
I knew this was going to be the answer too, so I wanted to show it on the screen though.
Okay.
So anyway, so that is, and if I take a look at the actual code that's in here, say my county equals uppercase arguments.key, because you never know what case you're going to get. And then I would say select star from election results where county equals filter county. So this is doing like the CF query params if you do it in code or you do it in script. Filter county equals my county, return type equals array. By the way, the reason why I'm doing this return type equals array is so that you don't get if you ever try to send back data, you get a CF query and you send back the data, and the weird Adobe default is you have column names as one block, and then you've got a array of just the results. If you say return type equals array, that no longer is a problem. It does it like a real JSON thing.
We used to call that Adobe JSON.
Adobe JSON, right? Or it works specifically with EXTJS. Like that's how EXTJS wanted to see it. So that's why they did that. And remember, Adobe was all in on EXTJS 15 years ago, whatever that was. I don't know. So anyway, that's pretty much all there is with this. A variation of the same thing here, going back to your question, how do you know if it's not a county or something like that? I set up these REST path templates, if you will. So this one here, I'm saying /party/key. Again, that key could be the party name. I can say, I could say key/party. So if you say green/party, or really however I want that to look. I've seen quite a few demos where they do like, if they want to send in like 2 keys, they'll actually do like key1-key2. And as long as that's whatever the URL matches, it's going to go do it. So, but yeah, so these two here are pretty much the same, but just to show again that works, I will go back into Postman. We're going to go say party, and because I'm going to go pick on the green party again, we'll say party equals green, and it's going to go pull back all of the green party results and their votes. 134 votes, 3 in Alger County. 14 in Oconee County? I don't even know.
Yeah, let's try Washtenaw, because that's University of Michigan for those listening area. Probably the center of the green.
451.
I bet they're all students.
Nah.
Well, maybe some professors.
I don't know. Or maybe somebody who just likes the Green Party.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so you can build these different, so off that one CFC, I can make some pretty complicated things. Remember, there is an upper limit to the width or the number of characters that you have in a URL. So you don't want to necessarily like have like 50 different parameters that you're submitting that way. There's probably a better way to collect those. But, usually, again, you'll have like 1, 2, or maybe 3 parameters. Something that I typically see in a lot of like the major like REST endpoints that I deal with in the telephony world is you'll have like a customer ID, you might have an account ID, slash, and then you work in like, let's say telephone, and then like, a model number or something like that. So you can collect multiple things in there and have like static entries in there too.
So one question, which is kind of like off base.
Mm-hmm.
You created this URL on the fly, Washtenaw County, Clinton, whatever have you. Those are directories that don't exist. How's it going to record in your like W3C logs? The same way you see it on the address bar?
I will show you. I even have that.
Oh man, you were anticipating this, weren't you?
I was.
Just curious.
So if I take a look at the access logs, we will see if it ever loads. There we go. If I go all the way to the bottom, you'll see it right here. Get rest/election data/Michigan/party/green.
All right. Yeah. Just wanted to verify.
Yep. So it'll show up as any other thing. The secret sauce that happens with both the ACF and the Lucee is they have a REST, or they call servlet, that sits in Java, and it captures anything that says /REST. Anything that goes /REST, it's piping into this application or into this program.
So it has to say /REST.
It will have to say /REST. Now you can change that. There is the ability for you to push a new web.conf file, it'd be a web.conf, where it does this mapping. So if you ever putz around in the web.inf directory, they've got like the servlet configuration and all that type of stuff. A part of that servlet configuration, they say, okay, about halfway through, you'll see it says /REST/ and then it goes to REST servlet.java or something like that, something to that effect. So that's how they capture that.
Would it make sense to set it to like the version number as opposed to REST? Like V1 or?
No. I mean, typically you would tend to see like, maybe like a /API, and then you can do the version number or something like that. And you can do that with like your application.cfc. So you set up a whole application and say I'm V1 or something like that, and that makes it more sense in that case.
Okay, that makes sense, because then you have to have a different server for each version.
Mm-hmm. And you can only have the one thing that is for the entire server. So you only have one REST servlet engine per server. I'll say
or instance.
Let's say per instance.
Okay.
I don't know for sure, particularly in the ACF world. You can do some really funky things in that web.conf file on the Lucee side. I can't say I've got enough experience on the Adobe side of what you can customize on that, what you can't. All right, so marching on. And like I just mentioned, you don't have to necessarily pick the end of the URL as where you're grabbing that variable from. You can have it actually from anywhere. Again, this one here, /party/key. I could have done /details or something like that to pull that in. So you can say /Randy, and then you can say /Randy/details to get more data or something like that if you wanted to. So you're totally customizable how you want to do that REST path. The key on it is you notice all mine always do key as what I'm trying to collect. It doesn't matter what you call it. It just has to match the function arguments. So I'm collecting f name or something like that. I would do curly braces f name there to pull that in. And that's how you could do multiple. I've already done this. This is just different endpoints. Okay, so that's all cool. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things we can also collect would be what type of data I'm requesting. So you can expose an endpoint and say, if a web browser is pulling this down, I want to send this type of data. If Randy's cool Teams application or something like that is requesting the data, I want it as JSON. If AIS calls and they say that my mainframe wants to pull down XML data, they can go and request XML data. And you can actually override these functions and provide different views of that same URL based on the requested type of data. So how do we do this? Let me jump back into the code. You'll notice earlier, I had that block of if I just did a GET request to it, I got the big block of HTML and all that stuff, and I had that table that kind of made itself. That's what this is right here. So remote function, get HTML resistant is just the name of the function. HTTP method equals get, produces text/HTML. So on your client, if you say accepts text/HTML, this is the function that's going to be returned. And then it'll go and execute this type of stuff. I can say application/XML, and it'll, this function will only be sent back if I'm requesting XML data. So it does all that for you. Now, the Lucee REST engine will automatically do some basic returns or conversions for text representation, XML, JSON, and WDDX. So you can say $format equals XML, and even though you're giving back XML or you're giving back JSON data, it'll go and try to make XML out of it. Okay, whatever. It gets really funky, particularly if you're building your own strings like this right here. Even though I'm sending back actual HTML, if I request that as JSON, what will end up happening is it'll just do a single bracket around it because it doesn't know what the hell is going on. But if you're sending data directly from a database, so if you're doing a query that actually has that metadata, that decorated metadata to it, if you're doing ORMs, things like that, then it'll have that decorated metadata to it, and it'll know, how to represent it as JSON, how to represent it as XML, how to represent it as all these other things. But that's the beside point. So this produces thing again. You can say if the user's requesting this type of data, I'm going to execute this function as opposed to the other one. Because remember, I have another function up top here that's just get all results, which is the everything. So if I don't know what I'm asking back or what the user's asking of, I'm going to go execute this. But if they're specifically asking for text HTML, I'm going to execute this one, even though the functions are exactly the same. So what you're calling is exactly the same on these things. So
But still is a separate function if you're
still a separate
XML.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can override that and say, if the user's requesting XML, this is how I want to give the data back. So, and how do we represent that? Again, if I go back here and we say just the regular one here, if I go to the headers within Postman, the headers section, oh, I want to show the hidden ones. By default, we say we accept */*. If I say I want to get back application/JSON, come on.
It's tape. You can't even type.
I might have to do override here. Accept, and I want application. So let me just type in JSON since it does a nice search on here. So I'm saying I'm accepting, when I make this call back, I want to accept JSON data. And if I make this call here, it should give me back the JSON data. And by the way, it makes it nice and pretty. You saw that, the raw data come back first, and then it made it pretty. The actual raw data that came back looks like this. But it goes and does this neat formatting thing for us. And if I wanted to do, again, if I do the HTML, so if I say, was it text/HTML, as that accept here, it'll come back with that really nasty HTML table that I created. Go. That, by the way, that was not the most efficient HTML I ever wrote or function I ever wrote. It just is meant to actually just execute. So, especially because it's a ton of data. It's like I said, it's like 60,000 rows or something. So right here, it's this big old HTML gobbledygook. But if I go to the preview over here, it should look like a table. So this is what came back from that server. So, like I said, I didn't make any changes to that. The URL I was calling or the method or whatever, it just did it. So,
how would you do that in the URL though? If you're going through a browser, say return back, tell you XML.
So in a web browser you can't, but if you're just doing the URL, okay. Remember this is not supposed to be, we're not really serving HTML. We're not supposed to be serving like that type of stuff. Now, if you do an AJAX call, whether it's a like a raw, like a vanilla JavaScript JSON call, AJAX call, or you do like something with jQuery and the AJAX call on that, you can specify what that accepts is. So very similar to how this is done right here. Yeah, let me change. Let me go and just say, just to make this a lot less data in the buffer here, Kent. So anyway, so continuing on, again, this is a picture of how you were to do that. In this case here, I have to say, don't automatically set the accept here. I want to override that and then say application.json. Okay, anyway, beat that dead horse. So anyway, REST endpoints working with verbs. So when we say verbs, this is the, if you were to do a form, like, submit form data, remember we always have to do that method equals get or post. That's pretty much all the HTML, the official HTML spec gives us. But we have all these other expressive verbs that we can use to do different things. And by the way, this is when we start getting to CRUD data. So you have get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, and then there's other ones too. There's a whole, whole slew of ones that you can use for this type of stuff. There are two special ones that you do need to know. So they're in the list, and you're like, oh, cool, I can use options because I want to give an option or something like that. Option and head have special meanings in HTTP, and they do things that are going to be outside your control. So options will give back a list of the methods, or essentially the list of the methods that are available on something, and head will just return back just the header of an HTTP. It won't actually execute on your, so that's something that's specific on your web server. But besides that, you can pretty much put any type of verb that you want in there. Do note that some web servers, some firewalls, some load balancers will limit you to the major ones, which include get, post, put, patch, delete, and copy. But in theory, they should support everything. So we can override these function calls so that a get call on a URL does a different thing than a put or a delete on that same URL. So an example would be if I have, let's say, a CRUD statement and I say slash /rest /election data /Michigan /Ingham County /party /green. So I'm pulling up the Green Party. If maybe I do a delete statement on there and it goes and reduces the vote by 1. And you keep on hitting that and it keeps on doing more and more.
But you're going to introduce that.
I mean, that's something you could do. Right, Rick? Except for the Green Party, because they only have like 1 vote. So, you know, that would just delete it. Yeah, just, yeah.
Plus one.
So, you know, if I do a get, it gives me the results. If I do a delete, it may delete something. If I do a put, it might create a record. If I do a post, maybe it, or a patch, maybe it will modify a record. So you can start to figure out how you do these same things on the same URL.
You can also have a table that grabs who's doing the deleting. It'd be a record of.
Sure.
You're going to audit something.
So we're going to build a quick CRUD application, starting with a create function. So I'm going to go into demo 2. And I'll close this. Demo 2. So again, I've got my application.cfc. The magic thing in here again is I've got a /CRM. So it's going to be rest/CRM, and it's going to be pointing to the CFCs directory. Okay, that's pretty cool. So in the CFCs directory, I have, ignore this application.cfc. There's a bug in Lucee that you have to do that if you're using ORM. But anyway, so remote function, list all customers. If I've got just a standard get, I'm just going to return all of the customers. So I'm doing entity loads. This is an ORM thing. If I just do entity load and I say the type of ORM or like the object, it just gives me all of them in memory or all the ones in the database. I can say get customer by ID, in which case I'm requiring that you have a /CRM /customer/1 for the first record, 2 for the second record. So essentially I'm pulling in that key field. All this one here is doing is entity load by PK customer, and I'm passing in that key field. It's saying it's numeric, so it should be pretty safe. So that's my get on there. But if I want to do an insert statement, I can do remote function insert customer. I can say required string username, required string. Okay, I'm not going to get into that just yet. But I've got HTTP method put. So this one here is the exact same as the get, so same URL, but I'm going to be doing a put instead of a get. By the way, I should probably show the demo here so we can actually show you what this looks like.
Verify next that line.
Sure, this laptop is saying like I've got 200K of memory remaining.
The hard drive thrashing away.
Yeah, it's going. It's the fans fully online here. So right now there's nothing in that database. I can go and do add record, customer name, Rick Mason, customer email, rick@x.com. Last year's sales, $30,000. I don't know, something like that. So we hit save. So now there's a entry in the database. Rick is customer ID number 1. We'll add another record here really quick, and we'll say Randy Brown. We'll say brownra@yahoo.com. And we sold him $50,000 worth of stuff.
You're putting a quote after, or maybe it's dirt on my screen after yahoo.com.
No, there's no quote there.
Okay.
So hit save. We now have 2 entries in here. Yay, there, it's nothing all that fancy. So what's happening under the hood? Let's go take a look at this demo. So there's a bunch of gobbledygook here having to do with datatables.net. The important piece here is the save records piece. So I've got an AJAX call URL. I'm doing a put to /rest/crm/customer. The data I'm sending in is username, email, and sales. I'm doing that in the form area. I'm requesting data back of JSON, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Really not a lot to it. On the CFC side, what I'm getting is I've got the function insert customer. I'm requiring username, email, and sales. I'm getting that data from the form, so from within the body, pretty much. HTTP method put, and then really the rest here is just an ORM thing. New customers equals entity new customer. I'm setting the customer name, setting customer email, setting the sales, and I save it. And what I'm actually doing is returning back a copy of that. I don't necessarily need to. I can just say okay or whatever. But if I were to do a post or in Postman here, so let me go and close this guy, and we'll go to the new demo. Nope, don't save that. So I'm going to do a put, and we're going to say HTTPS localhost rest CRM customer, and then I'm going to do in the body, I'm going to do a form, and we're going to say what was it, customer, what did I name it? Username, email, and sales. So say username is going to be Nick K. We're going to say email is going to be nk@gmail.com. And then sales is going to be $100,000.
Oh, y'all did us right.
Yep. This means I'm a bigger sucker, that's all. So when I hit send on here, it's going to go send it to the server, and it went and created customer ID number 3 and this data right here. Just to prove that this works, if I hit refresh on my handy dandy little data tables thing here, I'm in there too. So kind of makes sense?
Makes sense. It's just the only security is what?
Oh, there's no security there.
Yeah.
But I haven't built security yet.
Okay.
So
Another segue?
soon.
Okay.
So and by the way, I can go into Postman here and I can say customer 1, and if I would do a get on this here, say I don't need these anymore. If I do that, it should come back with Rick's information. Yep, Rick Mason, that type of stuff. If I do customer 3, should come back with mine. So the next piece that we're going to say is, what about a delete? So I could do HTTP method delete, and then I could pull back that REST path. So I can say delete from that customer 1. Again, this is pretty easy here. We do, especially when we're doing the entities. So here's my delete right here. Load entity by PK. I'm getting that key field. Entity delete, and then ORM flush, and then I return back OK, and then it deletes it out of the database. So if I were to do that via code, let's say Randy is a really bad customer and we fired him. I can change my
sales weren't high enough.
Sales weren't high enough. I don't know. They were pretty high. So I can go in here and say delete. So send the delete verb. Really, I'm sending back 2. I can hit send. It should come back with OK. And then if I were to do a get for all my customers, it should show that Randy doesn't exist anymore. I've got customer 1 and customer 3. And how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I did do that. I'm gonna assume in his W3C logs it shows those attributes: delete, patch, but whatever. I don't think I've used patch. I don't think I've used patch.
Again, those are all out there. You can use them for whatever you want, because remember I said REST doesn't. There's no
define it.
There's no guideline to REST. It's just using the things that we already have.
Yeah.
So
I presented on Supabase and they use patch for updates, which I've never seen before, but
that's what I typically do. I'll usually do a put to create a record. I'll usually do a patch to make an update. It makes sense. I've seen actually some that do actual. Yep. So you see right here, there's a delete. So you see the delete command right there. And then there's a put right over here to create that one. So it doesn't show the parameters in there, but it does show that you did a delete or a get or whatever. But this one here, the delete does show the URL because,
kind of wonder what my analyzer would do with that, because I'm pretty sure it's only looking at gets and posts. They probably just ignore them.
Yeah, maybe.
Which would be good because that traffic don't really count.
Shouldn't. I mean, that should be admin traffic.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so I've also got an update customer here as well. Same basic idea. So this one here, the thing I want to demonstrate with this is you don't have to get all your arguments from the same place. So in this case here, I'm getting the key field from the REST path. So I'm saying what customer ID I want from there, and then I'm getting the sales number from the form, so from a post, or so from in the body of the request. So if let's say Rick is all of a sudden doing really great, or he's an awesome customer or something like that, we can go do a patch for customer number 1, and we're gonna say he's no longer doing $30,000, he's now doing $500,000. So I can hit send, and Rick's sales thing on here now says 500,000. Kind of makes sense. Not a ton to it, so. And just to show on here, so last year sales 500,000. So, let's see here. I think we talked about this. This was the delete one. So authentication. So that was the next thing on the list. So
the segue is too early.
That REST, the REST manager or the REST subsystem that exists in ACF and Lucee does not have authentication built in. That doesn't mean that every API that you write is just sitting there flapping in the wind. It means that you have to roll your own authentication. So how do you control what web pages can access your server? Or can any user just go to any page on your server?
No.
Yeah, you probably have some sort of login mechanism, and if they pass the login mechanism
outside, so gotta be over the fence or on this side or certain IP ranges.
You can do the same thing with the REST endpoints. So you're literally everything that goes in that REST or in the REST endpoint manager is going through an application.cfc. So you can say if they're not logged in, if they don't have a session variable, you don't give them that code or you don't let them execute that. You can say, if they are logged in, they get, they can do the full thing. If they're not logged in, then they only get maybe the first 10 records or something like that. So you can build.
Can do just gets. Or they can do just.
Or they can do just gets. Or they have no ability to do a delete. Or they can't delete votes. They can only create votes or something.
Just keep rolling.
Yeah. Now you can also build your own. Typically for so if you're doing server to server communications, which is you're exposing these APIs and you're letting somebody else call them, you would typically do something like an auth token, or you do OAuth or that type of stuff. So you can very easily build your own authentication token system. So an example of that would be you allow an administrator to log into a portal of some kind. You say, I want to create an app ID. So they get this app ID and they get some sort of token back. They then need to stick this into their application every time that they make a call. So they have a bearer token, or they have something like that that says, if I'm making this call, I need to provide this bit of data with it. The really complicated places, you do an automated call with a login and password, they're going to give you a bearer token that only exists for a half hour or something like that. And then they can make those calls, and as soon as that bearer token is done, then those calls start to fail again. That's typically what you see if you start like interacting with, let's say, like Microsoft's like Office 365 suites. With
their secret key.
There's the app IDs and the secret keys and all this other type of stuff. That's how they typically do these things. Is like it's you send a login and password into this thing, you get back a temporary password, if you will, and then you send that temporary password with for every single call for a certain amount of time. And then your application needs to request another login and send your login and password again. It's going to generate a new token, and then you can use that token for a certain amount of time. So very easy to build that. It's just you have to build it. It's not going to be you can't just check a box and say, yes, I want bearer tokens and now they work or something like that. You can do some of that in the Adobe ColdFusion API manager, so it can do some of that for you. Not the easiest to implement when you actually get to the nitty gritty how you put it into your CFC, but it is there. You could also do something like OAuth. You have essentially, you force the user to get a login credential from a third-party server. That third-party server communicates to you in a database that says, okay, you can expect a client that is going to send you a bearer token of ABC123. And then as long as that client comes then to you and says, oh yeah, ABC123, you're good to go. Now I know who you are, that type of thing.
The thing is, in the API world, from what I can see, OAuth is by far the #1 authorization. And the CF world's been a little slow in making it easy to do.
I wouldn't say so. I would say probably a good third of the web services that I deal with OAuth. It's not the majority by any means, but yeah, it's definitely a thing out there. Bearer tokens, I think, is probably about 50% of them. So you get some sort of app ID, and then that app ID is what you use to, or an app ID in a SID or something like that. Everybody calls it slightly different, but you can do those types of things. So I have a very basic example of how you build like a auth token system. Again, it's in the sample code. So scroll down here. So this last function I've got in here is a remote function called update customer email. So we have a thing where we want to update that customer's email. We get a key we get the path, the key from within the path, the email address from the form, and then we get the token from the header. So this is expecting that, and by the way, this is where we have a key and then we have /email at the end. So you had asked that question. Mm-hmm. So we'll say like CRM/1/email. And this is expecting a post. But we can get something from the header. So this is that some of that data that's sent automatically from the API or from the client to there, and we're expecting a header that has token in it. If the token equals ABC-123, we're going to go update the customer's email and then reply back with OK. If we didn't get that, or we got something else, again, this could be coming from a database, this could be coming from an Active Directory server or LDAP, it doesn't matter. Wherever that we want to have that token generator available to us, we can do that. Mm-hmm. But if it fails, I can do a REST response of 401 and say, give the content of token invalid. So I then respond back to the API or to that client and say, 401 error, you suck. So how would I call this? Again, I can do this in Postman. I think we said that was a post, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So post, we're going to do 1/email. So we're modifying Rick's email address. We're going to go pass in the email address of rickm@mmcfug.org. But initially, I'm not going to go send in that token. I'm just going to send this, and it should give me an error. Better give me an error. Oh, it gave me a big error. What's the error? Parameter token was not found. That's valid, yes. The token was not found. So let me go and just stick a token in there. So I can go in here, and then in the headers, I can say token. Now I can say this. That's a fancy token. So when I send this, status is 401 unauthorized, and came back with the error of token invalid. So what if I want to actually do this the right way? I have this fancy token thing here, this fancy authorization thing. So within Postman, I can actually say I want to pass in a token. So we'll say a bearer token, and that token was ABC-123. This could come from somewhere else. This could come, something that somebody gives me. So if I hit send on here, oh, it errored. What was the error? Parameter token is required. Why did it not do token? Oh, because it says, authorization. Bearer token.
That's what you selected.
Oh, API key. That's where we're supposed to go. Yeah. So token, ABC123, it goes in the header. Came back as okay. If I actually take a look at the raw header on here, you'll see that it says token is something I'm passing in, ABC123, and that worked. So there we go.
Did it update Rick's address?
Should have.
Just checking.
Don't trust me, do you? There we go. rickm@mmcfug.org.
Make sure not just smoke and mirrors.
Moss.
Right.
All right. So any questions about the REST endpoints or any of that type of stuff?
You better be thinking when it comes to your security.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not any different than how you're probably doing security for the rest of your stuff.
Yeah.
If you're starting to do the song and dance of, okay, I want to have automated connections from some other server, then you need to start to think about, how do I best secure that?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like for your Teams application where you go and you get the ring notifications and all that type of stuff.
Yeah,
we've got part of the stuff that I've got in there is it's by IP address, so it can come from your IP, and then you also have a bearer token that you send in with every single call.
So I get those two things: spoof my IP, get the token.
Yep, that's the thing.
Get phone data.
You could find out every single time somebody calls you.
Right.
So, but that's how that kind of. But yeah, I mean, OAuth is a very valid way to do it. You can do so. Postman supports all sorts of different authorization systems. Again, they've got bearer tokens, basic authentication, which is like the matching of login and password. That's how like a web browser would do authentication.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when it would pop up like the native web browser thing and you type in your login password on that?
Yeah.
They have digest authentication. You can do OAuth 1 or OAuth 2. They have Hawk authentication, which I don't know what that is. AWS signatures. So this would be like your AWS secret and key, and then it combines in with your region and all that other type of stuff. NTLM is Active Directory authentication. Akamai EdgeGrid apparently also has its own way of doing client access tokens and secrets and all that stuff. So Postman supports all those things, and that's kind of nice. So
it makes the web unsafe. Tools like this.
So
that's what makes the web unsafe. Tools like this.
Well, I mean, this is for testing.
Yeah.
This is totally for testing.
Same thing I was doing to those satellite signals. I was trespassing my property. I was just testing.
No, you were shooting those down.
That's okay. I'll have to tell you a story about the Comcast guy after this.
Okay. So okay, so so that's kind of covers all the stuff I have for REST. Should give you a pretty good idea of how to build those. Do you have any other questions, thoughts?
I mean, just using what's already natively there. I mean, that's
Yep.
what I like about it, because you're not like reinventing the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty, common, except for like patch. I'm like, patch. I mean, options and
It still needs to be easier to do OAuth. That to me is
I mean, is there one
that's
way
part of the
though?
attraction for Supabase, and that I don't have to write the queries. I don't have a problem writing the queries or writing the code to generate it, but it'll create the that for you, and it just comes with OAuth. See,
Yeah.
I do it, but it's CF. It's you understand it, but
But the other piece of it too is, okay, so you do this in Supabase. Okay, so you have it tied to a database in the background. What happens if you need to mash in, let's say, 2 databases worth of stuff? You've now exceeded what Supabase can really do.
yeah.
So you need election data, and you also need demographic data that doesn't exist in their database.
Okay, that's a problem I don't know that I've ever experienced. So
That's
I've written
like-
a lot of software.
I mean, that's like 90% of my world is mashing data from multiple sources.
Okay.
So that's where.
Like, why would these square
Yeah,
legs
well,
fit
yeah.
here?
You could run them both and programmatically just throw them in a table and then deal with the table.
You could, yeah. I mean, you could do that client side, but then maybe you don't have access to that other data set or something like that, or it's whatever. It's a common enough problem where maybe it's not just database entries that you're talking about exposing. Maybe you're getting some sort of generated data. There's a lot of reasons why you would maybe want to own that API,
Right.
as opposed to outsourcing it.
Well, there's a lot of OAuth services, but I look at them and they're not easy to implement. They're easier maybe than coding it yourself, but
Well, and remember, there's 2 pieces of OAuth. There's being the OAuth server, and then there's the OAuth client.
right. I'm not
So
even running a server. Very few people are.
But so
You
if you're
guys
talking
might.
about, if you want to do OAuth authentication
Right.
for an API, you are the OAuth server, because you're handing out how that authentication happens. The client is the one who's checking it
I
out.
just want to be able to log in with Google or Yahoo or
Right.
Apple.
Right, but
I don't have to run a server to do that. They're running the server, right?
but you're producing the OAuth tokens, and that's the piece. That's a different.
I thought they were producing the tokens.
Well, you still need to be able to associate those tokens with something,
Right.
and that's the piece that gets a little bit harder.
Okay.
But as far as like those methods and that type of stuff, so get, post, put, patch, delete, copy. I said head and options are different ones. Link, unlink, purge, lock, unlock, prop find, and then view are common ones that you typically would see. And then again, you can do custom ones too, technically. Your mileage may vary on those, but
if your load balance and everything supports it, you're like, oh, this crap is, get it out of here.
Yeah, and like an F5, they do like the F5 we've got on campus here, like they do checks for really oddball ones, because they're like, Randy's not going to do a sex you up method or something like that. Like, that's not real. No, we're not doing that.
That's not real.
So.
For an update, Kentucky is leading MSU by 1 point with 7 minutes 35
Okay.
remaining in the fight. Maybe I'm the only one that.
Rick's betting on this, just like the other game in San Diego.
All right, so that's the CF side. Diving a little bit more into Postman. So I kind of covered the authentication systems a little bit. Again, one thing I use Postman constantly for is, okay, I need to generate a bearer token. It's a pain in the butt to do sometimes, like in code. So I'm like, okay, well, I can jump over here and say, I want a bearer token, or not bearer token. I want a basic auth, username of Bob, password of Joe, or whatever. I can jump over to headers and it'll tell me what that actually looks like. Because it's done that calculation for me and all that type of stuff. This is actually what's cool about this is it shows you what actually is being sent in that header all the way out. If I wanted to do, so instead of basic auth, if I went to, let's see here, Hawk. Let's not do that one. Let's do AWS signature. Access key of AC, this right here, security code of this. AWS region is US East 1. And then I can go over here to headers, and it actually has what that credential should be looking like when it sends it across. Now, what's cool is this technically wouldn't really change. For some of those authentication systems, it would, based on time and date and all that type of stuff. But if I know that this is what it's generally going to be looking like, I can go write my CF HTTP command, include this as a header. I've now figured out how to do, like, server-side authentication against stuff. You just need to know how to read this stuff.
It's useful.
Yeah, totally.
That's why the Green Party didn't have as many votes, because Nick was in there.
Exactly. Templates. So Postman allows you to, where Postman originally was just the functions I've talked about so far. By the way, you can also do params. So like these would be like query params that get stuck on the top. So format equals XML. So like it'll automatically stick that into the URL, that type of stuff. And by the way, you can keep multiple tabs worth of stuff open too. So if you need to switch between multiple of these, or if you go to my machine at home, I've got like 600 tabs for every single API that I've dealt with in the last month. And I just keep on like
Chrome tabs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like a browser.
Yep.
Yeah.
Picked up a bad habit working for you. Like 100 tabs open at any given time.
Thoughts, and finish those
Yeah.
thoughts, yeah.
And by the way, if you want to turn off these particular things, just uncheck it. It won't remove it from there, but it, pulls it off the piece there. You can also edit what cookies are being sent back and forth. So if you know that a user's machine would have a certain cookie, you can actually build those for.
What did you hit to bring up cookies?
Button over here under that says cookies.
Oh, okay.
And I can say, for mmcfug.org, and then I can actually put in what cookies would be available for whatever client is making that change or making that request. So you can go and test that. They have, so like I said, the headers, fairly common stuff. I can change what my user agent is, the accept coding, all this other stuff that maybe a weird API is asking you to change, and you can go and test those things. The body, so I can say, what am I including in the body? Form data or URL encoded data. Raw, there's quite a few times where an API will say, send me XML data. So you do this REST endpoint and then send me this weird formatted XML data. I can literally copy and paste that into here, and then it'll send it across for testing. Or in the newer case, there's if you're dealing with any Microsoft things, they now want GraphQL for any of their types of services. So if you're dealing with anything Office 365 or any of that type of stuff, they want GraphQL. So you write your query in the GraphQL language. It'll actually go and create that for you and show you how that's sent out. It's pretty cool. And there's binary. If you need to upload a file or something like that, you can do that too. So they also have a full testing suite in here as well. So as you're coding, you can actually have it do automated testing. So I can do they've got a scripting language in here where I can say, okay, create a new variable, that's the time, or I want to do 15 different variables that start with A, B, C, D, and whatever it might be, and send those across. They have environmental variables, regular variables, all sorts of different things. You can do tests, so you can do full, like a full testing suite against your APIs if you wanted to.
What's their language called and where's it documented?
It is technically JavaScript.
Okay.
And then they have on their website, they have a very good I mean, absolutely excellent documentation. Now, I'd hope so because these guys are documentation folks. But their documentation is really good on how to write these scripts. You know, they tell you how to do this and all that stuff. This is what the script looks like. It is actual JavaScript, and then they have different variables that you can insert in there to do different things. So what's neat is you can be coding your API, or maybe you're making changes to your API, and you can do like a full testing suite where I need to pass in 1, 2, 3, and 4, and as long as I get the words okay, everything is good. If not, it can go raise flags and send emails and do all that other type of stuff. They also, part of their premium services that they sell, they can also do test runners that exist in the cloud, and they'll keep on testing your APIs like on a regular basis. And if something breaks, they'll email you for, you know, server monitoring and all that type of stuff. Let's see here, going into this under the on the bottom half here, this is really our like the results of things. Again, I can see what cookies were sent back from the server, or, you know, sent back. I can see what headers were sent back by the server, content length of 5, because that particular result had said okay in quotes, return format, dates, all that other type of stuff. Every API can send back different things. So like when I deal with Twilio, for example, it'll send back its TwilML, you know, or things like that. Or remember when we were doing the get for just, come on, for customer, the body came back, and I can go and, you know, format this as either the raw data. Pretty means that it will try to format this so it's easy to read. By the way, you can do it as XML. It can do all these other types of things right here. Preview, it essentially puts it into a web browser. Visualize is interesting because you can actually have it do like charting and bar graphs and that type of stuff off that data. I don't tend to do that. I don't quite know how it works, but I know it's there. The save response thing is pretty interesting. So you can actually save the response. So like, let's say you output this really complicated JSON or whatever, you can save that to a file and then essentially replay that later on. So I'm used to getting, so let's say I'm building a CF HTTP application that's trying to get data, come back and process something. Instead of hitting the server 5 million times while I'm developing it, I can go and say, okay, let's just pretend you did this, and then, but you got the results of this. So you don't have to do the live query. You can go come back and do that sample data. They do have the ability to capture requests. So I believe you were talking about like
Proxies.
the proxies and all that stuff. So while you can't proxy the web browser, this can actually do capture request. It can capture requests coming out of here. So this will do its own man in the middle within the application, so you can capture those things and send it, you know, and see what's happening under the hood. So that is a thing that's in here. You can also take those captures and rerun them for tests and all that type of stuff too. So that is a thing that you can do. I've not done that myself, but it is here. Test runners, modify those cookies. I think the only other part, code. So they have a code generator in here as well. So by default, there's, I think, 30 some languages that are loaded in here. So you can say like curl, Dart, Go, HTTP requests. If you're doing stuff in Java, it'll actually give you the code that you can literally copy and paste into your Java application, into your whatever application for Node.js using, you know, copy and paste this here. This will do the exact same thing like that test that you just ran, or that URL that you just ran. They no longer include a ColdFusion code generator, but you can add one in yourself. So there's a definition file. You pop that into your install directory. ColdFusion will be there, and essentially it'll do like CF HTTP and do the whole parameters or whatever. I don't tend to do that a whole lot because I don't copy and paste code that's generated. But I tend to go to this the curl piece right here, And what's neat about that is it's pretty raw. It says, okay, this is the get, this is the location, these are the headers that you would need, this is how you do the encoding. I know how to view that. I know how to write that as a CF-HTTP myself.
Mhm.
That gives me the raw parameters I need to put in there. Where a lot of these other languages, they put a bunch of stuff in there that, like, holy crap, for Objective-C, which is what you'd run for iOS, you'd have to write all this to do one one REST call. My goodness. Oh,
More secure.
sure. Or wget, is very basic as well. So I can literally actually copy this. And if I go to MOBA, do I have enough memory for this? Probably not. So MOBA Xterm is my tool for essentially it's got a copy of Linux in it. I can paste this thing in here. Yes, I do want to paste the whole thing. It's not like that. I don't know why. Anyway, this would normally work. I don't know why it's. I don't know why it's not. Anyway, but you would copy and paste those things into there, and it should just do its thing. Shell wget. There's also shell URL session. Anyway, oh, that's also a long one. Anyway, so code generation. That's that.
Is the CF that was there out there as a file that you could install back in?
Yeah, you need to do a little bit of modification to it because of the last one that they published was like 4 versions of Postman ago, but it's pretty obvious what needs to change. It's not too tough. The other thing to talk about is some of the premium services or some of the stuff that Postman is really about getting to, and that is their documentation and all that type of stuff. If you've done anything with any type of modern companies that do that have really nice documentation, like on how to do their REST calls and all that type of stuff, it's probably came out of this program.
By the way, it says you got 5 minutes left. I don't know if you set a timer.
Oh, I just did the 2-hour thing or whatever, so no, it's fine. It won't actually kick us out.
Good.
So you can actually write your documentation in Postman, and you'll notice in here, like, so if I do like user, this is a sample of like for our communication manager. You can do things like templates and variables and all this other type of stuff, but this is not really any different than what we were just doing, where we just kind of paste in the URL or type in the URL and do stuff. You can actually do variables, and then it starts building documentation off of these variables. So if you are in a situation where you are creating an API and you say, okay, I've done all these tests, I want to have it build the API for us, it can do that. I can add examples. I can do some of the complete documentation. Okay, published. Okay, there we go. Let me go pull this up. So this is one that I actually wrote for interacting with our phone system, and this is actually, I think, stuff that you've consumed, maybe.
Oh, you didn't get our permission to put this out.
No. This is documentation I gave you guys to interact with my system.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So user management. So like I said here, this is one of the tests that I actually ran. I said, okay, get user data. This is the URL. And you can actually go in here and replace the URL with your real one and then say, yes, I want to run that, or things like that. Example requests, you can change what language that you're running this in. So I can say, instead of curl, I want to see all my examples in
JavaScript.
Yeah. Node.js request. I don't know. That's apparently a platform. So this over here, every example of how I've done, or how I configured my stuff in Postman.
Mhm.
It went and wrote these examples for me. So a user can just go in here and say, oh yeah, the language I know how to use, I can go right here, copy and paste this in, everything should be good. This is how it works.
Okay. That's cool.
So you don't have to explain how it works in their particular language. You can just say, here, you go and change whatever you want, and then away you go. This is what the response is, because I ran a couple of tests with it here. This actually shows this is what the response looks like. You should get an okay. This is what the headers you should be getting back, all that other type of stuff. This is live documentation that I can go pass to a customer. So device management, you want a status of all the session managers. Right here, this is how it would work in Node.js, or if I say curl, because that's what I usually leave it at. If I run the command line, this is how I can do that, and it works.
Sweet.
So you would go in here and you can actually, so a part of this is I can go in here and start typing in, the documentation. So I can say, I can write the documentation here. So this is the area where I can type in and say the get user method does this, and this is why you would use it and all that type of stuff. So all that like verbiage that it can't produce, you just type right in the program and it goes and syncs it up to the web. So a team of 3 people, so 3 logins can share this documentation for no cost. As soon as you get more than 3 people, then they start charging you. But still it's a pretty powerful tool.
This is supposed to be just a plugin for Chrome. What the hell happened?
Exactly. And then some of the other stuff that they do, like I said, you can, they have like system monitors. You can do automation flows. They have so much stuff that they've added. I don't know 3/4 of it. Honestly, like one really neat thing with this too is if you use Postman at home and then you also have it at the office or something like that, you create one login. Every time that you test something on your one of the at home or at the office, it'll sync up to the other one, so you don't have to worry about continuing work or whatever. It just kind of shows up at the other one. So that's 1,000-foot view of Postman and some of the cool stuff they have with that. Any other questions about Postman? By the way, it's pretty common for the major API providers like Twilio, like Symbol, like all those guys, where they give you a Postman collection. Essentially, it's a file that you download, you can import into your workspace, and then all of their documentation and how they do things gets loaded into your copy here. So you can literally go and say, this is my login, this is my password, and then execute it against their the APIs they've already set up, so you can go and test against their stuff without having to worry about writing your own code and figuring shit out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover. I think it goes right to 9 o'clock. So any other questions? Was Nicholas still on there?
Yep.
Yep, I'm still here. That was a good presentation.
Thank you.
Guess he wasn't sleeping.
You have any questions for him? Or?
None that I can think of. You covered it pretty well.
All right.
So, I mean, that's very useful stuff. So thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, and then the stuff is on GitHub. So anything that we've shown here, you can go and grab and play around with yourself. So I said you should just be able to do download to your machine with Git. If you have Docker installed, type in Docker compose up, and then you can start using it.
I just got more than 8 gigs. Like, no.
If you got 8 gigs, it should work, but don't run 8 gigs with Docker and also Teams and IntelliJ and everything else, because hey, it did crash. Did not crash.
Yeah.
Right?
Hard drive was about to spin off.
Oh, it's thinking pretty hard about it, but has not crashed. So give it that.
They give the same machines to secretaries that do the application developers at Michigan State.
I mean, this machine's like 4 or 5 years old now, so it's kind of long in the tooth. My department's not, nearly as rich as Randy's over here and gives people MacBooks.
I had to buy this.
Uh-huh.
Bad thing.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, if you want to stop the recording.
All right. So let's do the break thing,